Town Council session. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Seeing no... Oh, I'm sorry. That's what happens when you get a rookie.
Oh, boy.
Please, all council members, please sign in.
Oh, sorry. I feel like I'm hooked up.
Uh-oh.
I'm not.
Well, we're going to do it
Mine's
again.
not lighting up.
Let's do it again.
Big bucks.
Oh,
Oh, I guess I have to go home.
She gone.
you want to try it one more time, Carol, or should we just go to a voice
No,
vote?
mine's like all funky here. All right.
Try it again.
It worked.
She broke. Yeah, I was blocked out.
We got it?
Oh, there nobody's is working.
Ladies and gentlemen, your fill-in mayor,
That's right.
John Diamond.
Hey, all right.
It's a success.
We got it all worked out. All council members are present with the exception of Mayor Mike Wade, who's away on personal business. Now the Pledge of Allegiance, everyone. Please stand. I
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next on the agenda is Parker Chamber of Commerce updates.
Hi, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I was with Dennis this morning, and he sends his apologies, but he is working with some other chambers this evening and will not be here to update.
Great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, public comment. We have a 3-minute limit. Any citizen who would like to come up, no action will be taken on these items. We ask that any item that you would present to us at this point in time is not on the agenda. So is there anybody out there for public comment? Thank you, sir. Please state your name and address.
Mike Appleby, 11605 Blackmore Street, 80138. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, it's a pleasure to be able to take part in my town's government. This is the most transparent city I have ever lived in, and whether it's the department websites, the town website, or social media, there's no excuse for any citizen not to know what's going on in Parker. I wanted to address a budget issue. I know that we have a sales tax shortfall this year. Sales tax is our revenue source for the most part in the town of Parker. And unlike our elected officials in Washington, we cannot go above our revenue sources. And I appreciate that. I like my reasonably priced pace tickets, the parks, the civic events that are held throughout the town, and I don't want to give up any of them. But as our town explodes population-wise, as the traffic on Parker Road explodes, and as we see more criminal activity coming into the town of Parker, I would request that the council look at the budget again, specifically cuts to the Parker Police Department. I think with across-the-board cuts, that's altruistically a great idea. But I think the safety of our officers in training and equipment, the number of officers we can have in Parker, and the safety and protection of the citizens needs to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mike.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Name and address, please.
Pardon me?
Name and address.
Eric Johansson, Parker. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Good. We're not to talk about anything on the agenda?
Correct.
There will be, when those items come up, there will be a public comment period for those individual items.
Yes.
Okay. How is what happens here this evening communicated to Parkerites?
So we have a public meeting that's posted. We also have it on our website.
Okay. You have to look for it. You have to be interested.
It's also being filmed. You're on live TV right now.
Correct.
Okay.
Facebook.
Want
On
me to look
social
at that?
media, social
No.
media.
Oh. I might comment when you get to Parker Point, but right now, I was just thumbing through your master plan, which keeps saying again and again, small town, hometown, great open space, great views. And I'm wondering what the end game is in terms of development and population and congestion, et cetera. I trust at this point, I don't expect you to answer questions because you probably deliberate. Do we submit questions afterward, in writing perhaps, to get answers to our questions?
So typically, public comment is for you to say anything to us, and we give you the floor for 3 minutes. At that point in time, for that specific item, you can come up, ask questions. Once we're done with public comment, then we'll approach staff and ask them for comment on your questions.
Anyway, I hope that master plan is looked at again and again, because this small-town goal seem like getting carried away, and how big does it have to get, really? Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else, ma'am, for public comment?
I just wanted clarification on when we could address issues on the
Sure.
agenda.
Okay, fantastic. Seeing no additional public comment. Oh, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Jillian Bernoski. I live at 17525 Wild Avenue. I didn't think about speaking, but I was actually looking into our master plan today because I was bored at work. I'm an accountant, it's not interesting. I am concerned that I know the updates are being made, but I don't think, at least from what I can see on the user end, that they are comprehensive for this explosion that's happened. I know that it was set up a long time ago, and there have been updates, but I'm concerned that when I said last month something about traffic being bad, and I got the response of, well, bad traffic is ubiquitous with Parker, that really was concerning to me because I love Parker. And I'm very concerned that if we don't address this master plan, and which apparently is what we go by for development, Parker's just not going to be what it is. And it's so amazing. So I don't know how it works to be updated, but I'd really like more information on that if you could
Great.
provide that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? All right, seeing none at 7:11, I'm closing public comment.
One thing, Jillian and Mr. Johann, if we could get like contact information, like a email address or something for you, so we can get you in touch with the right person to answer those questions about how those updates and when they happen.
Or if you prefer,
John Fuson.
also John Fuss is going to hand you
Yeah.
a card. You're welcome to email John. You can email us at elected@parkeronline.org.
All right. Next item is reports, items, and comments from council. Councilmember Martin.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Councilmember Holland.
One thing that I'd just like to share with the community is typically in the past, during the month of October, that was prescription drug take-back. Normally, that would be collected at the police department. Something that's very convenient, and I used last week, was I had medications from my mother that I did need to dispose of, and so I was able to just drive up to the police department during the hours that the lobby was open. I don't even have to, worry about working or disturbing the front desk personnel. There's a little machine or a little box over to the side. You can just walk in at your convenience, drop those off, and then they're collected by a company at no cost to the town of Parker. But I just want to let everyone know that if you ever do have something like that on hand, you don't know what to do with it, walk in, totally confidential, drop it off, and go about your way. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Rivero.
This morning, I attended Colorado Smart Cities Alliance, a civic study, and found it absolutely fascinating. Some other cities have already signed on, and I hope to see if this is something that Parker could get involved in. Again, it comes down to, I think traffic is probably one of the biggest ones, the most tangible ones. We have a road that is the spine of our community. There's not a lot of growth to add more lanes, and nor do we want to add more lanes, in my opinion. But the one thing we can do is get smart about flowing that traffic up and down that road, and smart lights, a smart grid system. Just one of the many applications where I think the technology can answer some of the questions that we need to see. Really like to see us get involved more with that. Had the honor, which I vice chair, attending in Cherry Creek Basin Water Quality Authority Board. We are looking to Mayor Pro Tem's delight at strategic planning, and looking forward to how we can do things in the future, getting away from what has always been the assumed status quo of that organization, and how can we be involved? How can we be proactive? And I think Parker's taken a lead on future development as far as dendritic development and using surface swales instead of installing concrete all the time and creating more infrastructure to a higher cost at a later date. Again, I think it's an outstanding move. Also, Douglas County Youth Initiative, happen to chair that one, very proud of that organization. And we have Youth Congress coming up on September 24th. So if there's any high schoolers out there that are interested, we get together, we discuss 8 topics, and hopefully coming out of those 8 topics are either a white paper, a resolution, or a proclamation to whatever you, the high school students, decide we need to do as a citizen. I enjoy, or as an organization, I truly enjoy that Congress. We spend a lot of time as adults guessing what's best for our students, and these are one of the few opportunities that we have to listen to what they want to hear, what's their point of view, how do they look at their communities. Really, really a valuable thing. So that's all I got.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Williams.
This evening was the Finance Liaison Committee. John Dyack, Mayor Pro Tem, and myself are both liaisons for that committee, and we got to meet with our finance guru who's sitting back there in the baby blue, Mary Lou. So if anybody, you like that? If anybody wants more in-depth information on our budgets, she's the person. I also attended the Parker Chamber Women's Forum, which was held at the Red Farm Bed and Breakfast. Debbie Lewis was also at that event, and the event was catered by Dream Dinners, both to phenomenal organizations in the Parker community. If you haven't visited either of them, I would strongly suggest that you do so. And then Meow Wolf held a community outreach, and Councilman Holland, Rivero, Lewis, and myself were all at that event, and very unique, very different concept coming to Denver. They're currently in Santa Fe. Is it only Santa Fe right now?
Currently. They're also
Okay.
going in Las Vegas.
Yeah, so Denver's coming next. They're also in Vegas, going to come to Vegas. Just an interesting concept, a very unique experience that you might want to check out. That's it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Lewis.
Oh, as Renee said, I attended the Women's Forum as well as Meow Wolf, and I was not familiar with that organization, and let me just say, you can Google it, but it has absolutely nothing to do with what the name suggests, nothing at all. So when you Google it, don't be surprised, you heard it here, and all my meetings are this week and next week. So that's all.
Great, thank you. A couple of items for me. I was at the Dr. Cog sub-regional meeting. We were furthering an item which is going to be coming up on consent agenda. It is a memorandum of understanding so we can partake in being part of the Douglas County subregion. Why that's important, it will allow us to be a part of distributing $23 million to Douglas County for transportation projects. E470, I sit as a board member, and I think most of this credit belongs to Councilmember Martin when he was the board chair. But we talked about the vehicle reduction fee ending as of September 1st, and that's going to go away. So next time you renew your registration, you'll have $10 less to pay. I also attended the Cherry Creek Valley Rotary Club Brewfest over the weekend. It's a fundraiser that held in O'Brien Park, third year. One observation I had, I talked to Councilmember Rivero, and I noticed that nobody was having their phones out and texting. They were all interacting, communicating, laughing, and an occasional picture or two, but it's always nice to see people talking as opposed to being on the phones. So just an observation. Okay, next item on the agenda, consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion and vote. There will be no separate discussion of consent agenda items unless council votes to remove an item for individual discussion. Ordinance on the consent agenda are for introduction only and will not be removed for discussion. Seeing that, I will entertain a motion or further discussion on council.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve consent agenda items 5A through 5E.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, Parker Pointe Annexation and Zoning, resolution number 18-055, a resolution to set forth Town Council's findings of fact and conclusion as to the eligibility of Parker Pointe property for annexation into the town of Parker. Ordinance number 2.262, second reading, a bill for an ordinance approving and accomplishing the annexation of contiguous unincorporated territory known as Parker Pointe property in Douglas County. Item 3, ordinance number 3.337, second reading, a bill for an ordinance zoning certain property within the town of Parker, Colorado, known as Parker Pointe property to PD Plan Development District pursuant to the town of Parker Land Development Ordinance and amending the zoning ordinance and map to conform therewithin, and an annexation agreement. So we'll have 4 motions, but 1 presentation. And with that, Mr. Workman, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. As was just stated, the first public hearing this evening is an annexation request and a zoning request for the Parker Pointe property. Please note that the applicant has provided the notification affidavit stating that the hearing has been appropriately noticed this evening, and the applicant is also available to answer questions that council may have.
Paul, could I interrupt real
Yes, sir.
quick? I'd like to correct the title on the zoning ordinance. Is this a planned development?
It is a modified commercial and open
Okay,
space.
so we probably want to restate the correct title.
Okay. You want me to go ahead and read it? Okay. Ordinance number 3.337 on second reading, a bill for an ordinance zoning certain property within the town of Parker, Colorado, known as the Parker Pointe property to modified commercial and open space pursuant to the town of Parker Land Development Ordinance and amending the zoning ordinance and map to conform therewith. Thank you.
Thank you.
The subject property for the request this evening is located at the southeast corner of Parker Road and Stroh Road. Currently, there is a single-family residential unit located on the northern part of the property with some associated outbuildings located south of that. The site itself is currently zoned A1 or Agricultural 1 in Douglas County. The subject property totals roughly 14 acres. To the north is undeveloped commercial pad sites. To the north and west is developed commercial pad sites in the King Super Shopping Center. To the west of the subject property is a mix of developed and undeveloped commercial pad sites. To the south is Kinney Creek, and to the east is the Colorado Golf Club. The applicant has submitted this annexation and zoning applications in order to bring the property into the town of Parker and develop the subject property with commercial uses. The applicant has also submitted a minor development plat with these applications that town council will hear at a future date. The master plan, the town's master plan for this particular area identifies this intersection as a community center. Within the master plan, the community center is identified to serve a large market area that would serve multiple neighborhoods. It is uses that are intended for this area include retail and personal business services, office, recreation, and restaurants. A modified commercial zoning designation would be consistent with the community center designation. On this particular slide is an image of the zoning map for the subject property. The area in red would be the area designated for the modified commercial. The commercial zone district within the town's land development ordinance allows for a variety of commercial uses, things like restaurants and banks and retail services. This area would allow for those sorts of uses with a few modifications to uses. So things in the area in red, things like auto sales or standalone bars, or while not permitted anyways, the property owner would like to further modify the commercial to not allow marijuana uses. So some of those sorts of uses would not be allowed on the property. The area that's in green would be designated as town open space to be undeveloped. And the area that's in purple is requested to be further modified to exclude uses such as gas stations, car washes, restaurants with drive-throughs. Additionally, there's a couple of modifications to the setback, including a maximum setback from Parker Road of 65 feet and a maximum setback of 80 feet from Stroh Road. In reviewing the request for annexation, there are a series of criteria that the application was reviewed against, and staff determined that the requirements have been met. 3 important criteria is that the property is within the town's growth area. It is at least contiguous with 1/6 of existing town boundaries, and that the request is consistent with the town's adopted plans as they've been amended. Related to the zoning criteria, there are 9 approval criteria for a zoning application. Those are detailed in staff's report. However, there are 2 that are highlighted for the purposes of the presentation this evening. The first is that a need exists for the proposal. Per the town's municipal code, anytime there's a request for annexation, a zoning is required in conjunction with that annexation. And second of all, that the property is the correct site for the proposed development. Again, this intersection in this property is identified for community center type uses, again, trying to focus the retail and the office employment, those sorts of things at this intersection. During the Planning Commission hearing, there was public comment. Public comment generally related to 3 topics: prairie dogs on the site, storm drainage, and the existing structures on the site. During the public hearing, staff responded both to Planning Commission and the residents that prairie dogs are not an endangered or protected species, that the developer will be required to follow any state requirements. That is a part of the minor development plat that is still in review, that the applicant will be required to construct a stormwater detention pond and associated infrastructure in accordance with town standards to meet the town's requirements. And the existing structures on site, as part of the review of the applications, at staff's request and a referral agency request, the applicant did conduct a historic survey of the property, documenting the structures and the conditions of those structures that are on the property, as well as doing some research into the history of the site. And that work is available to the public on the town's Track It website for their review, and it will stay as part of the case record in perpetuity. In summary, both the requests meet the criteria for annexation and for zoning. Staff would recommend that Town Council approve the request for annexation for the 14-acre property at the southeast corner of Parker Road and Stroh Road. And on June 26th of this year, Planning Commission recommended that Town Council approve the request for a modified commercial and open space zoning for the property at the southeast corner of Parker Road and Stroh Road. That would conclude staff's presentation. However, staff is certainly available for any questions, and again, the applicant's available for questions as well.
Great, thanks, Paul. Council, any questions for Paul? No? Would the applicant like to make a comment or presentation?
Not at this time.
Okay.
If you have questions, we'll answer those.
Fantastic. Seeing that, we're going to open it for public comment at 7:27. Again, public comment is 3 minutes. The public can come up and talk to us for 3 minutes. If questions come up, we will make note of that. We will then address the questions after public comment is closed. So is there anybody for public comment? Come on down.
Can you hear me all right?
No, you got to come. Please come to the podium, yes. Name and address as well. Oh, yeah.
Do you know offhand whether the prairie dogs will be poisoned or relocated?
Sir, it's 3 minutes. You can discuss anything you want. You can ask questions, and what we're going to do is we're going to write them down. And once you're concluded, then we'll address your questions after everybody has had their 3 minutes.
Okay, so
All right.
address them to you.
Yeah, name and address so you can be on the record. And then you have 3 minutes to say what you want, as well as to ask any questions. If you ask the questions, we'll then write them down.
Nice.
Your 3 minutes or less will end. Everybody will have a chance. Once we close public comment, we will then address everyone's questions.
Great,
Okay.
great. Mine will be 1 minute. Just, if you write down that question, whether the prairie dogs will be poisoned or relocated, I'll volunteer to help relocate them if that's your problem.
Awesome.
Sir, I'm sorry, can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Eric Johansson,
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
10548 Stone Meadow, Parker, Colorado 80134.
Awesome.
And Carol would like his last name as
Yeah, can you
well,
spell your
so
last
please.
name for the record, please? Ms. Baumgartner needs it for the record.
You'll have to speak up a little, I'm sorry.
Can you spell your last name, sir?
Johanson,
Great.
ERIC, first name.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, I'm curious about that. It's a lovely site. Oddly enough, I come to the front door and there's a lady looking at the agenda, and somehow Parker Pointe came up, and I said, "Have you seen the property?" She said, "Yeah, it's beautiful." Yeah, I said it should stay that way. Anyway, just coincidence. I'm sure we need everything they're putting in there. I'm sure all that's there now isn't covering the needs. I'm being facetious, of course. I think there are other people here going to talk on the same subject, maybe better prepared. I'll give them the forum here, but thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Next person for public comment, ma'am. Name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Siobhan, that's Siobhan. The last name's Roder Cox, Roder-Cox. My address is 42943 Vista Ridge Road, Parker, 80138. I'm also here to address Parker Pointe. I was the woman he was talking to outside. It is a gorgeous property. I don't feel that we need more retail in Parker. I think we have enough retail. We have enough roads, we have enough parking spots, and we have enough asphalt. I think what we need to maintain to the best of our ability is our open space, our trees, our wildlife communities. While I know that prairie dogs are not an endangered species, they are, as I'm sure you all know, a keystone species of tremendous importance to the prairie environment. I would suggest, if it's within the town's means at all, that possibly the town annex the property and purchase it as open space. When I was down there this evening at 6:30, I saw about 15 pronghorn on the property, as well as prairie dogs, and I know it also has Praeble's jumping mouse, which is an endangered species. As opposed to continuing this, what feels to me as rampant development in this community, I would strongly recommend that we try instead to maintain as much of our natural heritage in Colorado. I was thinking about this today, and the one thing that makes me want to leave Parker and Colorado, the one and only thing that makes me want to leave Parker and Colorado, is the way we're just seemingly destroying the natural heritage that we have. And I think it's a terrible shame, and I really would like you to consider allowing at least the protection of the trees on the property, the protection of the Praeble's jumping mouse, and possibly the movement of prairie dogs to another location. There are people who are willing and able to help with that. I'd love it if you could see the way clear to making land in Parker available for relocation of prairie dogs. They are a keystone species of tremendous importance, and really, they are so important for the welfare of the prairie, the welfare of over 140 other species. I know you know these things, and I hope you'll take them to heart. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Jeff Toborg, 11765 Crow Hill Drive. Is that my timer or?
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you.
I could talk in that time. So. I'd just like clarification on the modified zoning for commercial, or the zoning for modified commercial. Does that include just commercial, or are we talking also to include light industrial, regular industrial, multifamily usage? Is this the complete open zoning like we have in Pine Bluffs, or is this strictly reserved to commercial? If we can answer that question before the vote, I'd appreciate that.
You bet.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Name and address for the record.
Dwayne Heitman, 18624 Main Street, Parker, 80134. Heitman, in case you didn't know how to spell it. I'm taller than Tolberg. The question I have is, looking at the thing and working for the town of Parker, can we start limiting the access points to Parker Road? We just redid this intersection for the development on the north side. We're going to these initiatives to increase the flow of Parker Road, but yet we keep bringing more and more traffic and allowing traffic to turn in and off of Parker Road, which is really creating, and if you've never turned off of Lincoln onto Parker Road and had somebody stop for that little driveway just past Walgreens, you'll know what it's like. But by that thing that by that plan, we're allowing more and more people to turn in and off Parker Road. We just redid that intersection. Why didn't we put a turn lane in there? I have to say, I think it's kind of poor planning. If we're going to annex it, why didn't we widen that intersection when they were all there? Create a turn lane. That's my questions.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Please step up, name and address for the record.
Terry Dodd, 11450 Marlboro Drive. I remember reading a couple of years ago about the history of the structure that is on that property that really goes all the way back to the founding days of Parker, and I'm curious as to what the feasibility is of keeping that structure and keeping that history alive. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that feasibility. If it is feasible, I think there should be some requirement on the developer. I know that the town is very limited in funds available to take care of historic structures, and even with the park north of Cottonwood, there's limited funds to maintain. So I think that there should be a burden, since that structure is on that property, that the developer, if it's feasible, should be able to keep that structure, whether it has to be relocated or put on a different spot on the site, maybe even to enhance the commercial aspects of the site for visitors, whatever. But there is a very important historic structure there, and it should be looked at closely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Hi, I'm Amanda Steinhauser, and 9157 Bayou Gulch Road, Parker. Just to touch on the historical facts, yeah, it was first developed by William Cantrell, who is the one who he took wood from that site and built the first courthouse of Douglas County in Castle Rock. And then it was sold eventually to the Allison family, who developed hot springs because the water from Kenny Creek was medicinal, and then the O'Brien family. So there is a lot of historical value to those sites. And they are dilapidated, they've been salvaged, but if there is anything that can be done to still restore that site, because it's sad that it's a beautiful site still, even with the dilapidated buildings. It's therapeutic to drive past it and to see prairie dogs playing, to see, I thought they were antelope, pronghorn. I don't know if that's the same thing. I'm from Pennsylvania, so we don't have those out there. And the reason why they go there to eat, to graze, is because the prairie dog eats the grass, so the grass grows new and it is full of nutrients. So that's why there are those animals grazing there. And it's a beautiful site. There's raptors that nest there every year. And one of the old cottonwoods, I don't know if that's one of the trees that they're going to cut down or not. They're going to cut down, I think, half of them. And they are hundreds of years old. There's the Preble mouse that is an extinct, or it's on the animals to watch. And they did designate a small space for that, but whenever you bring in a shopping center, I mean, there's going to be people everywhere. I mean, how can you really safeguard that area? I don't know if they can somehow fence off an area, create more open space for the prairie dogs so the animals can graze, to keep the mice safe, but either way, I mean, if you develop it, it's not therapeutic anymore. It's one of the last beautiful properties to look at before you come into Parker and you see what I think looks like the apocalypse certain places because they've just plowed down everything. And they're developing so much and it's so fast, it's depressing to see. There's no other word to say it. I work with the public. I meet people every day that live here in Parker who have lived here for years since it was dirt roads. And it's pretty rare that I meet somebody that actually likes how fast things are growing. They might not like prairie dogs. They may like prairie dogs. But
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Sorry.
your comment. No, you're fine. Anybody else for public comment? Name and address for the record.
My name is Kenneth Ramsey. I live at 3862 Elm Avenue, Parker, Colorado, 80134. Why would any builder oppose something that increases available water for new construction and can make money doing it? Prairie dog burrows increase our well water supply by facilitating groundwater recharge. And prairie dogs have great entertainment value, like aquariums, lush gardens, new cars, and many other mall attractions. Prairie dogs can and do attract large crowds of watchers from their huge fan base. Selling tickets to watch prairie dogs can be a money-making machine. As Winston Churchill once said, Americans can be relied on to do the right thing, but only after they try everything else first. What we are missing with this project is enough time to execute a relocation of the on-site prairie dogs. The numerous obstacles from the city of Parker, with Douglas County, with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, with the state of Colorado, and with the builder are all taking time to overcome. Prairie dogs are not our enemy. Prairie dogs are in fact our friends. Prairie dogs are food for many other species. Prairie dog burrows provide shelter for many other species. Killing prairie dogs is a terrible and unnecessary waste of this wildlife resource. Remember the Colorado Non-Game and Endangered Wildlife Fund on our income taxes? If we are killing off their food supply, then what good is this wildlife fund and where is the money going? The most common poison used to kill prairie dogs at this time is aluminum phosphide. Death by this poison, or any poison, is an especially cruel and inhumane way to die slowly and painfully over days. This is an insult and is disrespectful to this iconic species. Poison causes tremendous pain and suffering through internal bleeding that can last for days. This kind of animal abuse is never acceptable behavior. Killing prairie dogs is a terrible and unnecessary waste of wildlife resources, as I said. Prairie dogs are an important and underappreciated key asset of our great American Plains heritage that we should be using to our benefit everywhere possible. We are all going to die at least once. A good death is quick and painless as possible. Death by poisoning is a terrible death. Death by poisoning is torture. For over 100 years, people have chosen to exterminate prairie dogs as if they were something we could live without. We have been slow to recognize that prairie dog burrows increase our well water supply. In the 1820s, the first maps of this area that includes Douglas County was labeled the Great American Desert. Without prairie dogs and with too little well water, we will have the Great American Desert instead of the Great American Plains. One new road at a time, one new building at a time, one new parking lot at a time, we are changing the Great American Prairie into the Great American Desert. Thank you.
Mr. Ramsey, thank you very much. Anybody else for public comment? Thank you. Name and address for the record.
Jillian Bernosky, 17525 Wild Avenue. Okay, so I have some questions that I would like you to address. So the jumping mouse. I know prairie dogs and everything else on the property are not protected, but the jumping mouse is. So I'm wondering, for the development, I would like to know how the mice are going to be relocated. I'd like to know, I mean, legally, just because you have space for them doesn't mean you can't wipe them out first, I presume. I don't know, but I would like to know that. And if poison is used to kill the other species, I'd like to know if that's going to affect the mice. From what I can tell from the plans, the drainage area seems to be in a place where the mice might get flooded, and I would like a little bit more information on that, because they are endangered, and it seems like a loophole. So I'm not sure if it's actually a loophole or that's what's happening here, but I would just like more clarification. And after this meeting, if we get answers from a developer, like about ethical issues, things that aren't illegal, do we have any recourse if they go back on them? Any sort of at all? Like if they were to, I guess I don't have a good example. I'm just wondering if we make this decision today, if you vote on this decision, you say, yes, we're going to annex and rezone, and then bad decisions are made, is there anything that can be done, or is it just a train that won't stop? And if so, I would really like to, like if there's nothing we can really do about it after the fact, I'd really like more answers on, I know it was said that certain specific things will be enacted. Like he said something about marijuana. I'd like specific details on that and things that we can hold the developer to. So anyway, I really hope that before we proceed with this, we demand really concrete answers, because this is actually a really big decision.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I close public comment at 7:45. Mr. Workman, do you want to start with the prairie dogs and Preble Mound, the wildlife issues, and go down from there?
Absolutely. As council's aware, the town currently does not have regulations for prairie dog mitigation. Those are per state requirements. So we will let the applicant address that particular issue. As it relates to the Preble's jumping mouse, I'm going to bring up the zoning map. Again, the area that's in green is to be zoned as town open space. As part of the minor development plat, that area will be dedicated to the town for town ownership. Those are the boundaries, the surveyed boundaries of the established Preble's jumping mouse habitat. The open space zoning does not allow for development. Therefore, that area will remain undeveloped and no impact to the Preble's jumping mouse. Looking through the notes here, there is a beautiful stand of cottonwoods on the property. The majority of those along the south property line and along the east property line will be preserved as part of the development of the site. There are some of those cottonwoods that will be removed. The applicant has agreed and will pay a tree mitigation fee as part of their annexation agreement. That language is in there. The question related to the modified commercial, as mentioned during the presentation, the C commercial zone district allows for commercial types uses, so retail, restaurants, offices, things of that nature. That zone district does not allow for multifamily or light industrial uses. In the same vein, the question that was just asked related to marijuana, that would be, right now there's no property in the town of Parker that would allow for that use. This modified commercial, the applicant felt strongly about including that as a prohibited use on this property as well. If the town position were ever to change on that, they wanted that zoning associated. The access and traffic, those topics are specifically related to the minor development plat. However, as part of that review, staff and the applicant are working with CDOT for one right-in, right-out access off of Parker Road, and then access from Stroh Road would be the shared access for the new light that's going in. There's also some dedication and some improvements to those right-of-ways associated with the minor development plat. Again, the details of that will be discussed at the public hearing for the minor development plat. Since it's not here, that application is still under review. Again, there is a historic resource survey that is available in the project file. It will be maintained in perpetuity by the town to document the structures that are on the site, as well as the history or the folks that were original to that site. There was a question related to a raptor nest. During staff site visit, staff did observe that as well. The applicant was required to perform a survey for the specifics for what type of nest it was, what type of bird it was, that sort of stuff. The results of that survey are that it was a raptor nest, and per state requirements, the applicant will not be allowed to perform construction during the nesting period for that raptor. And again, the issues related to the water quality, again, those are specifically associated with the minor development plat, but the applicant excuse me, has submitted a series of plans to be reviewed both by town staff, county staff, Fish and Wildlife Service, urban drainage, all those folks to ensure that drainage meets all of the necessary requirements and will not impact the floodplain. So that's the list that I have. But certainly, if there's additional questions or further explanation, staff would be happy to get into that.
All right. Paul, I have feasibility of preserving the historic structure. Have we had any discussion on that?
As part of the historic resource survey, there is a section that talks about that. The structure, the previous home that's there, not the single-family home that's right there at the corner, but one further south from that. The resource survey does indicate that it is in severe disrepair, and any preservation efforts would be significant at best, if feasible.
Okay. And to me, the only other item I have, and I'll look to council after this. There was a mention on ethical issues, any recourse. So to me, if there are anything out there, we can make it a condition of approval, which enjoins us empowers us as a town to put the burden on the developer if we approve it. So if there is nothing like that, then we, the town, do not step in and aren't a party to that agreement.
Just to expand on that, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, there are a variety of administrative mechanisms that the town has as well.
Please.
During a construction phase or a grading phase or things like that, if the town certainly does inspections on an interval basis as projects become under construction, as they're grading, that sort of stuff. If staff or inspectors do observe that things are not being done in accordance with approved plans, there are administrative mechanisms for the town to go so far as to issue stop work orders and/or initiate fines until those items are corrected.
Great, thank you. Council, any other questions? Councilmember Holland.
Paul, it appears that this applicant is determined to move forward with this development. So if we were not to annex them into the town of Parker, I think we've experienced unincorporated Douglas County boundaries have been a little bit extreme to our standards. And so then we would have a bordering property who may have who knows what pop up. This gives us more control and keeps it within what we expect the town of Parker, or we would like to see the town of Parker to look like. I know to some people that may be a little extreme, but again, let's remind everyone, Douglas County is quite different, and if they were to go under some of those standards, who knows what we would have over there.
That's well said.
So.
Councilmember Rivera.
Sorry, no, actually, well said by Councilwoman Holland. I think that we could gladly point some of the citizens to neighboring properties that are under Douglas County zoning and some of the things that have been built on those pieces of property. Can you walk me through, just for a layman's explanation on the record, what is today's annexation versus what is the next meeting? Sorry.
The minor development plan?
Thank you.
Fair question. The request this evening is for two items. The first is to bring the property within the town's borders. So town standards for things like design requirements, uses, height limitations, that sort of stuff, the town's requirements would apply. The zoning request is simply to establish the uses that are allowed on the property and the associated, what we would refer to as bulk standards. So things like setback requirements, parking requirements, landscape requirements, those sorts of issues. So there's really two big picture applications that are before town council tonight. One is, do we want to bring the property into the town? And the second is the modified commercial and open space that's being requested consistent with the approval criteria for a rezoning and the town's master plan? The future application, what we refer to as a minor development plat, is the subdividing of the property, which would take the property and further subdivide it into individual parcels for development, for site-specific development. Because the plat is associated with access, infrastructure improvements, roadway improvements, that sort of stuff, those items are not before council this evening. However, they will be before council at the future minor development plat.
Excellent. So on that, and again, just for education, since we have a captive audience, can you walk me through who would pay for those access improvements and why didn't we build it earlier?
Sure. The best answer to that is, for the timing, when those improvements were made, it was unknown whether or not this property would ever develop or when it would develop. The second answer to the question is that the developer is responsible for paying for those improvements, since it's their property that's necessitating the improvements.
Councilmember Martin.
Hey, Jim, can you remind me, I don't think the town actually has a specific ordinance or anything. We default to the state law regarding the prairie dogs and that sort of.
You're absolutely correct. We default to the Colorado Division of Wildlife.
So we don't have a statute, for example, for us to make some sort of requirement of, we have no basis or legal basis really to do that.
The town does not regulate prairie dogs. We look, again, to the state to regulate prairie dogs and the disposition of prairie dogs.
Councilmember Lewis.
All right, just a little further clarification, Paul. Not just this developer, but any developer. There are different stages where not just a stop work order or a fine or a combination of that. It can get to another stage where if they are not meeting what they agreed to do, CO's certificate of occupancies can be withheld until such point in time they have remedied whatever they may be in violation of.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
So right down to the very time when, even if something happens and it looks like it's ready to go, and we find that something has not been complied with, it can stop then, and those certificates of occupancy can be issued. So all along the way, we're going out and checking, so there are always checkpoints to make sure that that's happening, and repercussions if a developer is not doing what has been agreed to.
That is accurate. I would also add that even after a CO is issued, the town has certain remedies through our Neighborhood Services Department to ensure compliance even after a certificate of occupancy is issued.
And if I could add, at this stage, there's going to be an annexation agreement that's in your packet. It's one of the 4 items that you're going to consider tonight. And the annexation agreement covers the financial obligations associated with this annexation, including the significant road improvements that have to be made. At the platting stage of the minor development plat, there'll also be a subdivision improvement agreement. And again, that's the agreement that covers the actual public improvements that are installed, and those improvements are secured by cash or letter of credit. And if they are not constructed, as we've experienced in the past, the town will use the cash or draw the letter of credit, and we'll actually complete the public improvements.
Councilmember Williams.
So all we're voting on, sorry, so all we're voting on tonight is annexation and zoning, nothing else?
Correct, and as a part of the annexation, you'd be approving the annexation ordinance. I'm sorry, the annexation agreement.
Great. Councilmember Rivera?
Sorry, quick question back to probably a minor development meeting, but again, the retention pond that you talked about earlier would fall under the zone property. The open space would remain as it is to this day, open space. It would look exactly like it was, except for maybe a cut through of pipe or whatever to get
That's
to the
correct.
creek.
At this time, the detention pond is not proposed in the open space.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? No? Jim, I have a question. You were talking about state law, and from what I understand, state law defines prairie dogs as destructive rodent pests.
That is the language in the statute, yes.
Okay, and what do they, what does the state law indicate as to how to get rid of them?
Well, again, basically, we're going to defer to the state to address that particular issue, but I'm not aware of any specific regulations on the matter of disposition.
Great, thank you. Paul, I think you indicated the applicant was going to come in and talk about the relocation of the prairie dogs.
The applicant is prepared to answer any questions that council may have for them.
That'd be great, please. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, my name is Jerry Davidson with Perception Design Group. I'm the civil engineer for the project. Address is 6901 South Pier Street, Suite 315 in Littleton, Colorado. As far as the prairie dogs, the applicant will have to comply with the state law. He is willing, he's indicated a willingness to allow some of the citizens, if they have a method of relocating those prairie dogs, to allow that to happen, there would have to be some, some agreements as far as not getting hurt on the property, such like that. But a lot of times it's difficult to find a place to take them. So all we can commit to today is state law and allowing the citizens an opportunity to relocate them if they want to, if they can do it in a timely manner.
So I guess to me, what would be a timely matter? Because that way we can make it a condition of approval, and that way it's not something that
I would say we will not be ready for construction with our other hearings and stuff that we have to do for at least 60 to 90 days.
Okay. Thank you. And
Just to insert.
Yes. Excuse me.
Go ahead, Dan.
My name is Dan Yakoveta. I'm the developer of the project. My address is 975 Lincoln Street, Suite 208, Denver, Colorado. When we first looked at this project, we've been working on it for 3 months, or 3 years. I think 3 months and about 17 days and about 17 minutes now. We like the property, and when we first looked at it, we saw the prairie dogs. I've built a lot of construction, 20 Albertson stores in Colorado, and it's just not new to me. And I fully expected that there would be some talk about the prairie dogs. I checked with the city or the town when we first came here, and there was no set regulations that we had to do anything. So I waited till when we had the planning commission hearing, and there were 4 individuals that came up and said they were worried about the prairie dogs. Immediately after the meeting, I talked to them. I think I talked to the gentleman here. And I told them that I had absolutely no intention of poisoning them. It never entered my mind. We don't think that way. But I told them, I said, you call the city, and if you want me to work with you to do something, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff until I know what is necessary. And I said, I'll work with you. Call me, and we'll set an appointment, and we'll get this worked out. I never heard from anyone. So I'm making the same request tonight. If they want to call me or meet me afterwards to get my telephone number, or if I have to call them, I'm more than willing to try and work something out with them, something that's reasonable that I can do that doesn't cost me a lot of money. So we understand that, and in some ways, we agree with them, but we can't solve all the problems in the world. So I'm willing to help, but I can't do everything.
Thank you. Council, any additional questions for the developer? No. All right, thank you very much. With no further questions, I will entertain a motion or motions.
I move to approve resolution number 18-055.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion approved unanimously.
I move to approve ordinance number 2.262 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I move to approve ordinance number 3.337 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
I move to approve the annexation agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is ordinance number 2.263, a bill for ordinance approving and accomplishing the annexation of contiguous and unincorporated territory known as the Kime Ranch property in Douglas County. This has been, the recommended motion is to be continued to a date uncertain. Council, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Are we good? Are we good? It's not working, so let's do a voice vote. Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Councilmember Holland?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivera?
All right.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next issue is Tax and Fee Assistance Program Agreement for Mainstreet Pier LLC.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I am currently employed by the applicant, so I am going to recuse myself.
Thank you. Mr.
Mayor Pro
Carlson.
Tem.
If I could interrupt, this is a public hearing, so I don't know if you want to open the public hearing and state the time.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll open the public hearing at 8:05. Mr. Carlson.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, we bring to you tonight a application with the town to participate in the Town of Parker's Tax and Fee Assistance Program pursuant to Parker Municipal Code 4.02. The planned development will consist of a 4-story hotel, 51,000 square feet approximately, independent boutique hotel with a ground floor retail and tenants associated with the 1.7-acre development. The applicant is here and would like to make a brief presentation, then I'll come back up and address the specifics of the TAP agreement, if that's agreeable to you.
Yes.
It is, thank you.
Mr. May.
Name and address for the record.
Mike May, 12936 Arizo Circle, Parker, Colorado, 80134.
Thanks, sir.
Good evening, council. It's been a long journey, and I'm glad to be back. We learned a lot along the way. Tonight, we're here to talk about the project was approved, the infill in front of the movie theater that's been sitting there vacant for years. It was supposed to be multiple items over the years, but has to date been open vacant land. I want to thank the council for all your patience through this process and the staff and all of their help. From the staff, particularly John Fuso and his folks, Paul Workman, I'm not sure he's here tonight, Economic Development, both Matt and Weldy, who over the years have worked with us on this. Actually, 6 years now we've been working on this, I know. So I don't want to get too much into what the project is because you guys know, but we are the anchor building for what will be known as the west end of Main Street. It'll fill out the downtown. Ours is the building that's actually filled in. Those others are just gray spots. They are not ours. The developer will finish those off. What will be built as part of our building is that plaza. We're building the public plaza along with the fire pit. And no, I'm not paying for it, Mitch. We're facilitating the building of it. It's actually the developers doing the plaza. And I want to talk about the economic importance of this project because we've been through the pretty pictures several times now and what this project means. I'm going to start with, like you folks, I'm addicted to public service besides my day job. And 3 years ago, I was appointed by the governor to be on the state tourism board. I want to give you a little tourism information as a backdrop to the hotel. I won't be long, but it's a little macroeconomic. So on page 276 of your macroeconomic book that I handed out. I'm kidding. Can we go to the next slide, please? Actually, one more. There should be another one after that. No. Just two. That's all right. That's all right. The Colorado Tourism Board did a study, and you guys have a piece of it in there, about the economic impact of tourism in Colorado. And the first thing you think is, what does that have to do with Parker, Colorado? And I've given you the impact overall first is $21 billion, 171,000 jobs, and $6.3 million in wages. I'm not going to go through all the stats. About 2/3 of that comes from overnight visitors. Half of that spending is in the Denver metro area and generates about $1.3 billion in local and state taxes. You see on the handout in front of you, Douglas County's share of that, which is for overnight travelers only, some $300 million in economic impact to Douglas County. That's our little share of those billions of dollars. So what does that mean to Parker? Well, we have a few hotels in town, as you know, but they're up on the interstate. For lack of a better, hey, I love Holiday Inns. I own Holiday Inns. They're wonderful people. But we lose the discriminating traveler, those who come here to Parker to do business or for whatever other reason. They get on Parker Road at the end of the day and drive to the tech center and go back to their hotel, to one of the premium hotels, adding to the congestion on Parker Road. You may remember we had the golf tournament here a few years ago, and we thought what the impact would be on Main Street, and it was mostly empty at night because the premium business left town, and they went to the tech center. So this small hotel, 51 room, hopes to keep that premium high dollar customer right here in Parker instead of leaving at the end of the day. Of course, it also should be somewhat of a destination given its the nature of it, and we hope to pull some in from Lone Tree and DTC and so forth and come enjoy our town, as well as for those of you who have discriminating grandmas when they come to visit and they want to stay there instead of the Super 8 or the Holiday Inn. The project is more than a hotel. In fact, most of the revenues are from retail and restaurants, as you may have seen in earlier pieces. I think that's going to be presented, I'm not sure. All of the tenants in our building are locally owned. You won't find a national chain in there. Our building is locally owned. It's mine and my partners. The investors are mostly Parker and Douglas County. So this is really a hometown project. Our tenants are hometown. And for those folks who currently leave town to go to DTC and the tech center. Sorry, I've got dry mouth. You guys don't have water here. I'm fine. What service?
No, don't do
You can tell he owns a coffee shop in town. He immediately jumps up to. So those that are currently leaving town to go to Shanahan's or Del Fresco's or those premium restaurants in town. And hey, I was just at the garage tonight. I love our local restaurants in Parker. We'll expand upon that and be more so. Let's keep our folks here and not have them drive and not have them drive to the tech center, keep that sales tax here. That's what this project's about. And I know the rest of the project is committed to the same when the other buildings come in that you saw. It's not national chains. It is local businesses, retail, restaurants, and so forth. So that's it in total on why this economically matters to Parker. Besides the pretty pictures and a nice place to go, the sales tax and the dollars stay here instead of leaving town. And that's all I've got, other than to thank you for your consideration. If you have questions, I've been around 32 years. You can find me.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Council, any questions so far? No?
Not this time.
Nope. Thank you. Mr. Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. May. The hotel that Mr. May has presented and given you some enlightenment in terms of cash, the generation of revenues from, represents a significant investment in the town and in our downtown area. It involves a total capital investment of approximately $19 million, with an estimated core and shell valuation of approximately $14 million. The annual sales are projected to be approximately $10 million per year once it's stabilized, and will generate approximately $3.7 million in retail sales tax and lodging tax over a 10-year period. The business estimates employment of approximately 50 full-time positions, with salary ranges from $36,000 to $120,000 when fully operational. The restaurant and retail operations will result in approximately 150 additional part-time and full-time jobs. The 20 Mile Village Hotel project meets the following goals of the town's TAP program. It creates new jobs. It creates new sales tax. It contributes to the diversity of jobs and employment opportunities in the town. It increases retail diversity. It represents development within a defined urban renewal area. And finally, it enhances a vibrant and unique downtown. The proposed TAP agreement that staff has got in front of you tonight proposes a TAP agreement with Mainstreet Pier that would include a 50% rebate of building permit fees and construction use taxes. It would further recommend a rebate of 50% of sales tax generated from all sources within the development, both retail and hotel, excluding the Parks and Recreation component of the retail sales tax, and the lodging taxes would also be excluded. The maximum rebate of fees during this agreement and taxes shall not exceed $400,000. The combined annual sales projections for 1 year are estimated to be approximately $9 million, stabilizing at $10 million. And this project will generate about $50 million over the 5-year, $50 million in revenues over the 5-year period of the agreement. Any questions I may answer?
Thanks, Matt. Council, any questions?
So Matt, just to be clear, since this is all part of one development, the individual shops, restaurants, whatever, this type of agreement would go over the entire project. Those individual businesses would not be eligible under this program for themselves, correct?
That is correct.
Any additional questions, Council? No?
Mr. May has something?
No? Okay. Seeing none, I will open it for public comments at 8:16. Name and address for the record.
Jillian Bernoski, 17525 Wild Avenue. Okay, so I just have a couple of questions. Overall, this sounds great. I had family in town this last weekend. I cannot tell you how many people were crammed into my tiny little condo. So I love the idea that there'd be a hotel in that area because, I mean, you love your family, but I was like, I'm pretty...
To a point. You love them to a point.
Yeah, not when there are 7 of you in a 2-room condo. So why didn't the prior developments go through? Was it something to do with zoning or price, or I would just like a little bit clarification on that. Also, it will only be 51 rooms, which sounds like enough, but is it going to cause any problems for parking or for traffic? I know of just 51 rooms, and that's not that many rooms, but typically a traffic study is completed for something like this. I wanted to know if that was completed or what the results of that were. And besides that, if the answers to those come back good, I really hope you vote for this. That sounds fantastic.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Name and address, as if we don't know.
Mitch Trevey with Parker Mainstreet Partners, 10510 Dransfeld Road, Suite 100. That's Trevey. I'd just like to step up and speak in support of this application. It's good to see that the town is considering partnering and assisting with this key development as it comes to town. It's definitely a needed component of our growing community. Glad to see Mr. May has been persistent in bringing this to our town rather than taking it to another. That's very good. The overall project itself welcomes Mr. May and his project, and we're looking forward to completing out the rest of the development to support that project as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Name and address for the record.
Terry Dodd, 11450 Marlboro. Question is, this is strictly a TAP request and not a TIF request, correct?
Yes. Correct. Yes, sir.
I think this is the right location.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? Public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment at 8:19.
Got a few questions.
Yeah, a few questions. Matt, would you like to attack it, or would the applicant like to come up and address those comments?
I'm always happy to.
Get in front of the microphone.
If I might proceed,
Oh, good.
Mr. May.
Oh, I can stop, yeah.
Just a couple of things. Prior applications, a question was asked in terms of why had a prior application for a hotel in a different location failed. The record there would show that there were a number of different reasons under consideration there. It was parking. The actual site itself is vastly different than the site that's currently proposed. A number of issues that were raised during that application process led to council asking that project be set aside.
I think real quick, Matt, I think her question was that location.
Yeah.
So from yeah,
very good.
Just from a historical standpoint, Brunswick Zone actually owned that piece of property for quite a long time. They carried it through the recession, everything else, determined that they were no longer going to open a location there, and it has sat dormant ever since.
Correct.
It's the super truncated.
They actually owned it before 2008.
Right.
The other question was asked regarding parking and roads associated with the project. And while those are not addressed as part of this, as part of the issue that's before council tonight, which is strictly the TAP agreement itself, the planner for that project is here. And in fact, those will all be addressed as part of the planning process and the approval of the site plan and the building itself. If you'd like to have further comments from the planner, he's prepared to make some.
Council, any additional comments from the planner?
Yeah, I think just maybe a short summation about how this could actually lessen cross-traffic. We talked about it, crossing Parker Road and getting people to stay on either side and spreading out that demand.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Sure. As part of the review of the request from a land use perspective, part of that analysis included the Main Street master plan and the fact that this site is identified as a galvanizing site with the proposed plaza that's also part of it. The site plan application for the specifics related to parking, landscaping, building height, architecture, all that stuff has gone through the review process, and all of those requirements have been met per the town's ordinance. So all of those items have been determined to meet the requirements of the town.
Mr. May, would you like to back clean up?
They did good. Yeah, we're fully parked, and I wanted to get to, there was one question about, are the other individual businesses going to come back? And we're the first building in on this, and there will be, us and a big plaza and nothing else to start with unless Mitch moves along quickly. So we are fully leased before we broke ground. But we also offered to our tenants some significant incentives to make sure we were fully leased, because they're going to be out there on that plaza all by themselves. We still think it'll be successful, but that's drives to part of the reasons we've come with this request, is we are the anchor tenant and we are the launch of this project, and also understanding we need to have a full building, so we offered incentives to our tenants, and we're thankful if the town will partner with us in that effort to get this project launched. Right building in the right place, finally. We finally get it right. Thank you all very much. And we got there. Well, I don't want to reopen that. There's differing opinions. But I think we're in a good place, particularly for the retail component of this project. And I hope you'll see fit to partner with us on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, council?
Just a comment. I agree with what was stated earlier. I think this is the right place, the right project. I think even more so because of its involvement, or its Parker involvement. I truly, truly appreciate Mr. May and crew's dedication to the local entrepreneur and not seeking out the chains that could fill this space. I think this is a perfect example of a well sought out project, and truly it's going to be a boon. I think that area of town has been long hurting for a city center, a neighborhood center, and I can't wait to see a hustle and bustle over there with all the residents surrounding that area.
Great. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the tax and fee program assistance agreement for Mainstreet Pier LLC.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Looks like we don't have it. Let's do a voice vote. Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
There we go, there we
I'm
go.
sorry. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Find Ms. Holland.
All right, yes, let's go get Councilmember Holland, please. Thank you. Do we open ordinances with the time?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
It just gets it on the record.
Have like 3 cups of coffee.
All right, we're good. Okay, next up,
Now you have the shakes.
ordinance number 3.147.6, second reading, a bill for an ordinance to amend sections 13.02, .101, 13.06.070, and 13.07.030 of the Parker Municipal Code concerning residential roadway buffer standards. Will open the ordinance at 8:25. Ms. Parkinson. Oh, you bet.
You want me to help you?
Don't do that.
No.
We do have a 10 o'clock cutoff time, Debbie. We want to stick with.
The pros.
All right. Debbie, do you work at the Geek Squad? Is that what you do?
That's my
Yeah.
part-time job.
All right.
Yeah, if you do that, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I drive a car.
So I've lost my notes, so I gotta dig them out.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Town Council. Tonight, we will be considering amendments to 3 sections of the Land Development Ordinance concerning residential roadway buffers. Section 13.02.010 is the definitions section, where a definition will be added for residential roadway buffers. Amendments to the landscape and design standards, the other 2 sections, will add requirements for buffer widths and landscaping. Hey, it works. This amendment will require applicants for new single-family detached and attached residential development to incorporate a landscape buffer between the back or side of residential lots and adjacent arterial and collector roadways. These photos represent the do's being proposed and are an attractive addition to the public realm. And these are the don'ts. The town of Parker has experienced substantial growth and development over the past few years, including single-family housing. Much of this residential development has occurred on challenging infill sites. The design quality of these projects has become a concern because new residential development is being squeezed into smaller lots and pushed closer to major roads in response to economic pressures such as increased land and construction costs. In response to these concerns, the town has identified the problem of inadequate buffer between residential lots and major roads as an issue to be addressed. The town's land development ordinance currently lacks any standards that address the requirement for and design of residential roadway buffers. The Community Development Department has spent nearly 2 years analyzing the issue, consulting with residential developers, preparing standards, and testing them to ensure technical feasibility. The new standard will ensure an appropriate buffer and prevent the creation of fence canyons along arterials and collector roadways. The standards will mitigate nuisance impacts such as noise, promote a desirable visual environment along public right-of-ways, and preserve community character. Development of this amendment has been a collaborative effort and has spanned, as I said, nearly 2 years. Staff completed the draft of the original residential roadway buffer standards in February of 2017, with a required minimum buffer equal to 1/2 the right-of-way width on each side of a major road. The development community, represented by the Development Liaison Committee, met with staff regarding potential impacts on total lot yield, water costs, and ongoing landscape maintenance for homeowners associations, and a need for flexibility to accommodate site-specific constraints and allow for creative design. Based on these conversations, town staff consulted with a landscape architecture and planning firm, as well as an irrigation specialist, to analyze the concerns and revise the proposed amendment accordingly. As a result, the proposed residential roadway buffer amendment addresses the development community concerns while still providing an attractive and effective buffer. A summary of those revisions follows on this slide and the subsequent. The proposed buffer widths have been revised to reduce the minimum buffer width to better reflect the built condition in town, which includes established residential neighborhoods such as Canterbury Crossing, Clark Farms, and Stroh Ranch. The revised buffers are approximately half of those originally proposed. Landscape requirements in the buffer area have been revised to encourage a linear design that can reduce water tap fees, increase water conservation, and lower ongoing maintenance costs for the homeowners association. The proposed amendment also allows for the limited reallocation of the required residential roadway buffer from one area to another within the same block, subject to the approval of the planning director. This reallocation allows for flexibility in design to respond to existing topography and other site-specific constraints. Reallocation can also result in an improved subdivision design. The Town of Parker Master Plan states, "Our community will continue to enhance its sense of place and pride through the refinement, development, and support of programs and policies which result in the highest possible standards of design in the built environment." Specific goals within this chapter include an emphasis on well-planned streets and walkways that maintain a safe and attractive public space. The proposed residential roadway buffer standards are consistent with these goals and the town master plan. In conclusion, the proposed buffer widths are reflective of the existing high-quality subdivisions in our community. They provide for flexibility in subdivision design and may reduce water and long-term maintenance-related costs for the development while they still provide screening and visual buffering. On July 26, 2008, the proposed amendments were unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. Therefore, staff and the Planning Commission recommend that Town Council approve Ordinance 3.147.6 concerning residential roadway buffer standards. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council, any questions?
At this time.
With council having no questions, I will open up public comment at 8:32. Anybody want to address council? Seeing none, I will close public comment at 8:33 and entertain further discussion or a motion.
Move to approve ordinance number 3.147.6 on second reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
Nah, that's fine. Yeah, I just want to, I'm sorry, I just, real quick, I want to say kudos, sorry, no, it's okay. I just want to say kudos to community development and all departments, but community development, this was 2 years in the making. I also want to thank on the record the DLC. They came to the table and really helped us better our community, and I truly, truly appreciate that. Something we've been after for, like we said many times now, 2 years, and it was a great cooperative effort, and I just want to thank everybody involved in finally getting this done. I think it's only going to be better for future development.
I think we all appreciate staff, and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Next ordinance, ordinance number 5.06.42, second reading, a bill for an ordinance to amend section 7.03.020 of the Parker Municipal Code concerning restrictions on use of motorized vehicles on public or private recreational areas. I guess we open the ordinance at 8:34. Mr. Maloney.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. The ordinance before you, as indicated by the title, concerns the regulation of the use of motor vehicles on public property, specifically recreation areas like trails and open space. And currently, we regulate it in two ways. One, on town-owned recreational areas, as well as privately owned recreational areas. So there's public open space and public trails owned by the town, and so there's private open space and private trails owned by homeowners associations. So with town-owned recreational areas, we've created an exception to the use of motor vehicles, and those are essentially our maintenance vehicles are allowed to use those trails for purposes of maintaining the trail. There's not a similar provision for private open space, and so it sort of puts homeowners associations in a bind that they can't use their vehicles to access their private trails to maintain those trails. So that's the first thing this ordinance would do, would make the would provide for a level playing field for HOAs as the town of Parker, so they would basically have the same privilege. The other thing this ordinance does as to town-owned recreational areas, to limit the times that the town administrator can authorize the use of these trails by, say, non-town staff, and the exception would be during community events. So there are community events like Parker Days where we need to use motorized vehicles on the trails for purposes of providing for the needs of that particular community event, as well as for others. And the third is, this is a very dated ordinance. It was originally dated, I think, 1989. And in those days, it was still a strong mayor form of government. So the ordinance provided that the mayor was basically giving the authorization, and we don't want that anymore. We have a wonderful town administrator, and so that would be the other change, to strike the reference to mayor and insert town administrator. So those are the three components of the ordinance that are before you this evening.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Nope. Seeing none, I'll open public comment at 8:36. Anybody, public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment at 8:36 and entertain further discussion or motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 5.06.42 on second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. With no further business before council, at 8:36, we will adjourn.